Well, happy, beautiful evening, Organo Nation. I'm Dr. Bob Rakowski, Blue Diamond consultant out of Houston, Texas. And I have the joy of sharing tonight's Millionaire Mentorship call. I think we're 10 years running now with this every single Sunday, people that have $1 million or more business sharing how they built their business. So for my talk tonight, I'm going to dive deep and into this book, Think and Grow Rich, which I've told the story. Some of you may have heard it when I gave my Diamond speech. I first picked up a copy of this book when I was 20 years old. I read it cover to cover, went through it very, very detailed, wrote my Think and Grow Rich 6-step plan, decided exactly what I wanted, when I wanted it, what I was going to do to get it, and then simply did it. And, back then my goals maybe weren't that high. I wanted to be a millionaire by the age of 40. As I happily say, I actually tripled that by age 38. But I had a lot of help along the way, right? My beautiful wife, Kelly, helped me to establish a number of profitable businesses. And we use that same drive to plug in to success in Organo and build a multi-million-dollar international business part-time while we work for other businesses. And what I can tell you is our product is so good, our system is so good, our leadership is so good, our advantage is so good, our market is so big that I'm fully convinced that if anybody really, really dives in and plugs into what this company has to offer, you can do the same thing. So it certainly does take work, but some of that work is certainly going to be on yourself. So one of the habits that I have is to take really solid books and read them again and again and again. So now I've been through this about 10 times and I'm amazed. Shane Moran said it, and I don't know how many times he's read the book, but he said, every time I pick it up, I think Napoleon Hill added another page or another paragraph. And I have that same experience. And it's not that's what in here has changed. It's that what's in here has changed. And hopefully the heart is always good and always pure. And that part of our being should be the same, but we should be ever expanding, ever growing, increasing our consciousness. So when I go through this book, the first chapter talks about how thoughts are things. And I'm going to give shouts out to a lot of good people, but I don't know if that looks at it like it's backwards, but this was a gift from beautiful Blue Diamond Deanna Nielsen, a great friend of Kelly and I's, as well as Stephen and Casey Nielsen Martin. But, thoughts are things. You want to choose really, really good ones. So I hope most of us really understand that thoughts do have things. And we'll go back to one of the greatest thinkers of all time, and that would have been Einstein. And he came up with an equation. He said E, energy, equals mass times the speed of light squared. Well, literally, thoughts are energy. And if we kind of play a little gymnastics with the math, if we take the energy divided by the speed of light squared, we get the mass. And what that tells me is if you give enough energy to anything, it will become real. So I recall having a conversation with one of my mentors, and they basically said, look around, so I'm in a beautiful home right now with a beautifully landscaped backyard and really nice pool and all that other stuff. But all of that started out as a thought. And it was thought that was given energy and then processed over and over again. And then ultimately it came to be. So if we give our thoughts enough energy, ultimately, we will make them into reality. So as we start going into this book, I'm going to talk about another thing that Einstein said. He says, the problems that we face, and I'm assuming everybody has problems in their life, even though we might not see them as problems, I hope we see them as stepping stones or challenges to grow with. But he said we can't solve those challenges with the same level of thinking that created them. So we always have to raise our thoughts. But I remember at the last convention, UTX, Mr. Bernie Chewick gave just such an incredible speech. And of course, it's part of our process of edification to really edify our great leadership. But he said something really, really powerful. And that was that his very first business partner was actually infinite intelligence. And if you're comfortable calling that God, you can. And I'm comfortable calling it that. But what a great business partner you could have. So if we talk about this infinite intelligence, the infinite thoughts, they're always there and they're always everywhere. So how in the world do we access that? If it's infinite, if it's all present, if it's all knowing, if it's all loving and omnipresent, always there, how do we access it? Well, the way we access it is literally by improving our own consciousness, improving our own vibration, improving our own group. So later on in this book, we'll talk about the mastermind, but it's been said, and it's probably reasonably true, that we're pretty much the sum of the 5 people that we spend the most time with and the thoughts that they are thinking. And so we want to get people that are on the same page, in the same direction, with the same mindset. And certainly together, we can accomplish so much more. So one of the favorite stories in that first chapter is entitled 3 Feet from Gold. And of course, it literally was about a gold mine, about a man who had been digging and working and sweating and investing. And then finally, he just gave up and he ended up selling this mine for a fraction of what it was worth. And the next guy, with just a little bit more effort and a little bit more direction, just happened to hit on it. Well, that is so incredibly true in this business, because we are all one prospect away from literally the breakthrough in our incredible business. So I think a story that many of you are familiar with is Manny Pacquiao. As I heard the story, and I heard it multiple times from good sources, Manny Pacquiao was not someone who was drinking coffee because it would actually make his heart race. And whoever offered him the coffee said, you know what? Ours won't do that. Now, I will tell you that as a doctor, I can't be that bold when I make a statement. What I might tell them is, hey, ours likely will serve your body better, that it actually has enough calming influence that you won't have a racing heart, but we won't know until we try. And by the way, that's one of my latest favorite lines that I share with people, and that is that experience trumps information. So you've got to experience our product. You've got to experience our shakes. You've got to experience our detox drinks, which I love drinking hot. You've got to experience our soap. You've got to experience our toothpaste. And when you experience it, if you really pay attention to your body, I think nearly everybody is going to fall in love. Of course, there's going to be someone that won't, and for whatever reason, but nearly everybody will fall in love. So the person that gave the coffee to Manny Pacquiao, as I heard it, he cautiously drank the coffee and then went, wow, okay, that wasn't a problem. Had another, and had the workout of a lifetime, realizing, wow, there's something in this product that's really, really good. And now if I were prospecting Manny Pacquiao, knowing that he had over 250 million ring earnings, I would have told him, like I tell everybody, look, our product's awesome. You can be a retail customer, you can be a wholesale buyer, or you can get paid to consume and share the product. Well, you may know that with Manny Pacquiao's income, he doesn't need the money. But smart business people are smart business people. He's also a senator in the Philippines. And I'm imagining, just from the humanitarian aspect, someone probably said to him, you know what? You love humanity. You love the Philippines. Just imagine how many families you could set up for multiple generations with your influence. And that's knowing the right buttons to push with your prospect. So when we get to this idea of being 3 feet from gold, we are going to be 3 feet from gold. But as we're talking about Think and Grow Rich, the thought that you may want to have as you're connecting with people is, how can I serve this person's highest interest? How can I connect with them? How can I connect them to their goals and dreams? And then how can I show them that we have the vehicle to get them there? I listened to an incredible conference that Mr. Bugs did in London. I hope I'm not throwing my London team under the bus, but they recorded it and sent me the recording, and I've listened to it many times. It was truly magnificent. In fact, when I reached out to the London team, I said, holy cow, you've got to listen to that again. And one of my team members said, I'm already on my 4th listen, and it was just the next day, but it's literally that good. But Mr. Bugs made the statement that he's actually in the business of dream building, of dream creating, of getting people to create their dream lives. And some of it's got to be thinking better thoughts, seeing a better future, knowing that we absolutely have a way to get there. So when we start looking at this idea of being 3 feet from gold, there was a little physical effort that got there. With us, we want to constantly be making the effort to reach out to the next prospect, or maybe follow up with the prospects that we've seen. I've shared these stats many, many times. These are national sales statistics. Any product, any service sold anywhere, only 2% of the sales are made on first exposure. 80% are going to be take between 5 and 12 follow-ups. So Kelly and I have been pretty good at sponsoring people. And what I can tell you is maybe of the last 100 that we sponsored, I would bet they average 6 or 7 follow-ups. So we are good at keeping them in the system, following up, finding out when things are right in their life, and then we bring them closer to their gold line, and we get closer to ours every single time. So now we go to chapter 2, and chapter 2 is desire. And it's pretty fascinating that it's pretty well known if you really, really, really want something, you'll find a way to make it happen. I listened to Earl Nightingale's summary of Think and Grow Rich, which is brilliant. He summarizes it in 1 hour. But he says you can tell whether or not you have a desire by how you go about trying to reach your goal. If you set a goal and you're just kind of tiptoeing in, you don't really have a desire, or maybe you don't see it yet. When you look at people that are ready to get all in with this business, I'll give a great example. My son, Jacob Rakowski, previous king of coffee, he put a gold pack on a credit card when he didn't have the money, but he had the desire to make it work. And literally, I'll definitely put him at the very top of examples of people that have done this. Just went out daily and sampled and followed up and sampled and followed up and found a way to clear that gold pack before the credit card payment was due, found a way to start making money fast, found a way to become a sapphire, found a way ultimately to get his parents involved. And as they say, the rest is history. He literally, coaxed Kelly and I along into the system for about a year before we finally really got the vision and jumped in. But full credit. So if you are sponsoring someone who's a little sluggish, stay with them. Bring them along with your success. Sometimes your desire, your success is going to be the best selling tool for everybody else. And if you have a true desire to help people, first and foremost, get their money back, that's going to be the first thing people want. But the statistics are fairly clear. If people start making money fast in network marketing within the first week or so, there's a much greater probability that they're going to be in it because they have the proof that's going to work right from the very beginning. So, the book says desire is the starting point of all achievement, and then it talks about the burning of bridges or the burning of ships. Certainly when you're all in and there is no turning back, there is a much, much, much greater probability of winning. When you look at desire, you just simply will go until, I heard it said of Cosmos Magimbe, how long is he going to be in Kenya? He's going to be there until. He's going to be there until he wins. He has a mission. He has a vision. And as I heard it, I didn't hear it directly from him. He wants to bring clean water. And just think about how the world will benefit when more of our population is nourished properly, detoxified properly. And what a great source of clean water to put in organic coffee, tea, or detox drinks, or whatever you choose to do. But Babe Ruth said this. He says, you can't beat a man who refuses to be beat. And so Hollywood has great stories about that. You look at the Rocky series, which I was so incredibly thrilled with as a child. I watched that, and that first fight, Rocky actually lost, right? He lost the decision, but he refused to be beat, and he literally got into Apollo Creed's head, and he came back and ultimately beat him. But it's so interesting. Apollo Creed's manager, he was far more skilled. He just looked at me and says, this guy's bad for us. I've never seen anybody take a beating like that and come back, take a beating like that and come back, take a beating like that and come back. We got people like that in Organo. You may be one of those people. If you are, God bless you. Way to go. Way to stick with it. You look at our leaders. You look at Mr. Holton Buggs. 7 years, and he made whatever. have $1,000 a month at 7 years into it. That's not much, right? Especially for all the effort that he put into it. But then to rise to the top of everything. Mr. Bernie Chu, I don't know what obstacles he had to go through to get this patent, to get this company set up, to get the partnerships. Mr. Shane Moran, kind of a leap of faith to get started when he did, but wow, did that turn out. Imagine taking your list of 156 people, and maybe you have more than that, and turning it into 100 or 1.7 million distributors around the world. That is pretty amazing. So when I look at this desire, it says, can you imagine yourself a millionaire? I certainly hope you can. We've certainly seen that this is very, very possible. Wayne Dyer said this. He said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. You want to look in the mirror and you want to see yourself as a millionaire. You want to be that millionaire already. Jim Rohn said, look, if you want to be a millionaire, great. Just be a millionaire. That's the way you do it. You just be a millionaire. And literally, Emerson said, act as if, but take on the characteristics of a millionaire. Take on the language of a millionaire. Take on the habits of a millionaire. Take on and develop the networking skills of a millionaire. And ultimately, when you persist, you're going to get there and you're going to be that millionaire. Chapter 3 is on faith. And, we could look at faith and certainly there's people that are in the faith Hall of Fame. But faith is the whole idea that you can see a better future and you can absolutely know that you're going to make it happen. So in this book, they talk about visualization. And so again, this company has appointed a chief vision officer who has absolutely phenomenal vision. I tell the story when I started in Organo, as just a really user of the product and then wanting to share it with my patient base. Jacob and I went to an opportunity meeting and they had so many people standing up that were sapphires. They used to have Organo University in the Galleria Mall. Mr. John Secouris now has it in downtown Houston, and thank him for that and for serving our team so amazingly. But people stood up and when they said, okay, well, we have a leadership position called Sapphire and these people do $14,000 a month out of their own home. And I was thinking, okay, black coffee is 60 cents a sachet. How in the world did these people do $14,000 in a month out of their home? And people stood up there and I was in awe. And then they introduced rubies and I went, oh my gosh, how is that even possible? How can someone do $40,000 or more a month? Then they introduced a few emeralds doing $80,000 a month or more. And the person that was presenting was a diamond doing $200,000 or more a month. And it was mind-boggling to me. I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it at all. And so I really like the quote from Isaac Newton. He said, if in my life I've seen further than most men, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants. And so we have these giants, certainly the big three in our company, that we can stand on their shoulders. But everybody in this company has an upline diamond. My upline diamond starting was Blue Diamond, Mr. Emmanuel Bernstein. And you know what? He always put a shoulder right there for us to stand on so that we could see the next step. And beyond standing on his shoulders, he held our hand, he game planned with us. He said, okay, here's how you're going to do it. And you know what? I have to really give him phenomenal credit for keeping it simple. He's certainly a master of the 4 steps. But beyond that, he's a master of promoting events. And here's what you have to see yourself. I see yourself seeing 5 things if you want to be really, really good in this business. And it's very consistent with our steps. Number 1, you want to be a product of the product. I wake up in the morning, the first thing that enters my mouth is Organo toothpaste, right? Then I'm going to wash my face with Organo soap. Then I'm going to make a cup of Organo coffee and probably 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sometime mid-morning, I'm going to start having shakes. And then as we start getting through the day, near the end, I really like the detox drink, or I like a hot chocolate. And then guess what? I'm gonna wash up and brush my teeth again before I go to bed. So I have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 exposures to Ganoderma, to Organo every single day. Now I want you to think about that. When we start talking about duplication, are your team members duplicating what you're doing? Do they see you drinking coffee, using their soap, using their toothpaste everywhere you go? Maybe they don't see that, right? But hopefully they see your pretty white smile and your skin looking better and shinier than it ever has. Maybe they see you taking the nutraceuticals. hopefully they see you giving out samples. Is what you're doing worth duplicating? And the first thing we want to do is be a product of the product. The next thing we want to do is we want to share our wonderful product. And in this incredible world, I've found it easier than ever to share our product. Certainly, you can have some with you at all times. And, you know, they used to say, hey, have the black in one pocket and the latte in the other, and that's how you're going to sample it out. But now there's so many things we can give. We can give the energy drinks. We can give the detox drinks. I've sampled shakes on airplanes, and then I've gotten business partners and customers on airplanes. You just strike up a conversation, reach for pour, and the flight attendant will come by, I'll get hot water, I'll get some coffee, and then I'll get some cold water, and I have my own shaker cup, and I make a shake. And you know, they'll look at you and go, what's that? I go, man, it's just the best shake in the world. They go, you got to be kidding me. I go, no, you want to try some? And we pour some in a cup right then and there, and they're trying the shake. So there's so many ways that we can share. But back to this and back to faith. You've got to be able to see it. And if you can't see very far, J.P. Morgan said this, go as far as you can see, and when you get there, you can see further. And a little pro tip here, advanced tip, if you want to really see farther, get on the shoulders of giants. And by the way, that's going to really be what happens at events. So once you've used the products, now you've shared the products, now you're going to share the opportunity. And I so much love the story of Nikki Idetta, who, you know, didn't give a presentation. I understood that she took the Gold magazine, she had it in front of her, and she would edify our incredible leaders and tell the stories. And she'd say, you know, I'm kind of new at this, but would you want me to give the presentation, or do you want the #1 networker in the world to give the presentation? And guess what? People say, I want the #1 networker in the world. And she would share the opportunity by simply playing the coffee that pays. And then, you know, shaking her head and nodding and being powerful and making sure that their cup was delicious and as they wanted it. And that's how you're going to share the opportunity. Another thing we want to invest in, and this will be what Warren Buffett says, he says, invest heavily in your #1 asset. Your #1 asset is you. So we want to plug into personal development every single day. Mr. Shane Moran has certainly made a science of this, reading this book. Maybe the world's foremost authority is Bob Proctor. And Bob Proctor, if you don't know his story, it's worth looking up. You know, it was the 1960s. He was earning $4,000 a year. He owed $6,000 a year. And he was given a copy of Think and Grow Rich. And the person told him, read it and study it every day, which, by the way, Bob Proctor is still doing it over 60 years later, or nearly 60 years later. But he went from $4,000 a year in the 1960s with no education to $175,000 a year in a handful of years, and within 5 years, over $1 million a year in 1960 dollars. That is what the application of the principles in this book can do for you. You've got to have faith, you've got to see it, you've got to believe it, and you've got to move towards it. So while we're talking about belief, there was a survey of the Fortune 100 CEOs, and they asked them, hey, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? And the #1 answer came back that they would believe bigger, faster. And that's a phenomenal tip. You've got to get that belief, because belief is going to change how everything works. So chapter 4 is about autosuggestion, and it is about affirmations. And as we look at science of this brain, we realize that we know more now than we ever have. We used to say a picture's worth 1,000 words. No, a picture is worth 2 million words. Now, you know, if I write down elephant, right, and I just have the word elephant there on the paper, that's a certain number of neurons that are fired. But when I picture that elephant in my mind's eye, 2 million times the amount of neurons fire. That's a lot of brain activity. When you realize how powerful this brain is and that you can think and grow rich, that's something we want to move forward to. But when we go to this idea of autosuggestion, it's very, very helpful to make it believable. So we've heard of affirmations where you affirm what you want. You know, I might want to say, I'm the greatest networker in the world. Well, especially when we look at the people that we're surrounded with, that's a pretty tough claim to make. But I might ask myself a question, which is an affirmation, which is a book by a guy named Noah St. John. And I might ask myself, why is it worth my effort to strive to be the best networker in the world? And then you come up with all kinds of wonderful reasons. It's one of the highest paid skills out there. None of us are as smart as all of us. None of us are as strong as all of us. Together, everyone achieves more. And that's the acronym TEAM. And they start talking about influencing the subconscious mind. And these geniuses knew way back then that the subconscious mind was far more powerful. So when we look at our brain, it's suggestive that we actually have 3 different brains. So I have this thing, kind of the base of my brain, which is the brain stem. That's known as the reptilian brain. Now, I'm more of a creation person than evolution, but I believe that creation evolved as well. And so reptiles have this brain stem, and you know what? They only care about survival. And it's actually suggested that 90+% of what goes on in our bodies are in that autopilot, on that brain stem. Now, the next section of our brain, some people call it the monkey brain, some people call it the mammalian brain, but this is the thing that's always on the look for something entertaining. It's looking for that shiny object. It's looking for some kind of change. It's the thing that wants to be entertained, and it is the thing that is profoundly distracted. So as some of my mentors have called this thing, they now call it a weapon of mass distraction. So when you look at that, you go, what can this possibly do for me? Well, right now, I have it in do not disturb mode. And in fact, I think I'm going to dedicate putting it in that for much more longer portions of the day because it will distract you. There's a statistic that the average person ends up looking at this about 2,600 times a day. Picture that a couple decades ago, no one had one. Now 2,600 looks a day. That is a lot of our consciousness. Well, then after the mammalian brain or monkey brain, whichever we want to call it, now we have the sage brain or the human brain or the brain that makes us really, really powerful. And you know what? That brain only works if our monkey brain is not being distracted. And so there's a book by a guy named Cal Newport on deep work. He says, look, get yourself locked away from all distractions. Just lock in, hone in on what you want to do and focus for an extended period of time. One of my favorite mentors, Robin Sharma, has a plan called 90-91. And he says, if you will focus the first 90 minutes uninterrupted for 90 straight days on your one thing, and I'm hoping in here our one thing is building our network and building our net worth. If we can do that for 90 straight days, he suggests that we'll accomplish far more than the rest of the people in the world in that 90 straight minutes, which can be really, really, really incredible. But we want to use this auto-suggestion. Ask yourself wonderful questions. Another thing I really like in terms of auto-suggestion is a gratitude journal. So starting every day, I am happy and grateful for, and then make your list. It's nice to go with a list of 10 things. You begin to realize, that we all have incredible abundance. Think about 150 years ago, no one had a toilet. People didn't have electricity. We didn't have heating and air conditioning like this. We live better than the vast history of the population has. And while I'm on a tangent with that, I heard a statistic that the doubling time of the Earth population now is actually less than 40 years. Now, we have about 7-point-something billion people on planet Earth now, but what that means is less than 40 years from now, they're going to expect that we're going to have 14 billion people on planet Earth. I want you to think about that. We have plenty of people that aren't going to be around in 40 years. So that means we're going to replace more than 7 billion on the planet. And let's just go back. If we fast forward 18 years, these are people that aren't even born yet that now can be in our business. I listened to Mr. Bugs at a private meeting at Expo, and he says, we had people in the room that were 18, 19, 20 years old. He says, 10 years ago when Organo started, these young men were 8, 9, and 10 years old. So think about how much can change in that period of time. So we have an ever expanding market. So the next part of this book is actually specialized knowledge. Now, here's where I actually sometimes go off the deep end. I want to know everything about the product. Some of you know that I've read over 500, probably now 600, 700 peer-reviewed articles on Ganoderma. And there's kind of a reason for that. For me, it's entertaining. I like knowing the subtle things. But there was an article published that said intelligence is overrated, meaning IQ. And the thing that runs the world now is EQ, emotional intelligence, emotional quotients. And since our doubling time is so fast in the world, understand that we have a lot of millennials out there right now. And I heard a statistic that somewhere 75% of people in network marketing are millennials. Now it's fascinating. They don't see the world through my eyes, certainly as a baby boomer, right? The world was different when I came along. And then I guess there was Gen X after me and now the millennials. But you know what? They want a purpose. They want to stand for something. And they've come to realize the old model doesn't work anymore. So Stephen Covey talks about advances in history, and he says, imagine when all of a sudden they came up with a fishing net, and two people could do the work of 50. Suddenly there was, 96% unemployment. That was massive. And then when farming came out, there was massive unemployment. And then the Industrial Revolution came out. And now we have all this incredible leverage of the internet. And we have 20-year-old billionaires that learn how to use technology and connect with people. And connection is absolutely magic. So that could be one of your specialized knowledges, to connect with people, whether it's online, which I don't think is as good as in person. I listened to an interview of Mr. Holton Buggs, and someone asked him his best tool, and he said, "You're looking at it. It's my smile. I'll put my smile and a handshake against any other tool." And certainly he's right, and we want to develop that smile and that handshake, and then we've got our samples of the best product in the world. So if you're going to look on specialized knowledge, leverage the knowledge of what's already present from people in your company with the tools that we have, but get that knowledge of connecting with people, connecting them to their dreams, and guiding them to achievement. So the sixth part of this book is actually imagination. So one of my great friends posted something on Facebook, what's the strongest nation in the world? And I think it was Einstein that said it was imagination. But I have another book here by Earl Nightingale that I've been reading, and it's called Lead the Field. And by the way, this is a real classic, and it's a short read and really, really good. But when he talks about putting our imagination to work, he says most people have never really done that. He says pull out a pencil and paper and sit down for an hour a day, 5 days a week. And you know what? Just try to get a list of ideas. And he says most of them are going to be bad. So Einstein said this. He said 99 times out of 100, his ideas aren't worth anything. And he's pretty smart, and he used his imagination a lot. But if you go 1 hour a day, and you do that, Earl Nightingale suggested just 5 days a week, take the weekends off, you got 250 hours of good imagination time. And guess what? Within that period of time, you're probably going to have one idea that could change your world, change the life. In fact, someone actually thought of, believe it or not, mixing Ganoderma and coffee and tea. You might think that's an easy idea. Life-changing. Absolutely amazing. So we've got to get that imagination working. And too many of us are numbing it with types of entertainment. Get a little quiet time. So, I've sat down for that hour with a pencil and paper, and I can tell you it's mentally taxing. I feel like I have to take a nap afterwards. But maybe start with 5 minutes. 5 minutes of silence. Think about how you can make our world better, your world better, how you can have that impact. So next we go with organized planning. And when we start looking at that, I listened to an audio this morning, because I'm always doing that, right? Always personal development. And it said, you know what? The 5-year plan, this was the quote, the 5-year plan is so 30 years ago. That was the individual statement. He said, the world is changing so incredibly rapidly that it is almost impossible to predict what's out there in 5 years. And he said, you know what? Look at your credit card statement. Look at your checkbook. He says, and I'll bet that 80% of what's in there in your last most recent purchases either didn't exist 5 years ago or were from a company that didn't exist 5 years ago. So I don't know if that's accurate or not, but what I can tell you is we are changing really, really, really fast. But here's an advantage we have. The world is still drinking coffee and tea. They've been doing it for over 1,700 years. Another book that I read, in the example of Starbucks, he says, imagine 20 years ago, every coffee shop on the corner was selling coffee for 25 cents or 50 cents a cup. And all of a sudden someone comes out and says, you know what, I'm going to charge $5 a cup. That would have sounded like the most ridiculous idea ever. But guess what? That's what Starbucks did. And we owe them a great debt of gratitude because they've made it socially acceptable for us to spend a fortune on that. So when it comes to your organized planning, 90 days. 90 days is what the speaker that I listened to this morning said. That happened to be Darren Hardy. What the furthest that most people can see without a major shift coming around. So let's go back a few years ago. The first time I saw Mr. Shane Moran introduce the 90-day game plan, he did it at one of the events, and I guess it was the equivalent of the UTX. And he says, I'm going to challenge you for 90 days. Go out and give 2 samples a day. Follow up with 2 people a day. Go ahead and plug in and be part-time and commit to 4 mixers a week. And by the way, if you're not doing 4 mixers a week, you're not part-time, you're sometime. Commit to a significant event every month and then 1 major event over the course of a quarter. He said, I challenge you to do that. He says, and guess what? If you do that, I believe you'll go diamond in that 90 days. So Kelly and I took that to heart. We said, we're going to do it. We want to go diamond. Let's make it happen. And we plugged in. We did our 2 samples a day. We did our 2 follow-ups a day. We did our mixers, 4+ a week. We did 1 Super Saturday a month and the event in the quarter. Guess what happened within that 90 days? We went diamond. So that 90-day game plan is proven effective. It's about how far you can see. And one of the things I got to tell you, you might think that that's not much, 2 samples a day, 2 follow-ups. But all of a sudden you start getting people in multiple follow-ups. And it became a significant effort. So it's not like you're going to get diamond done for nothing. But the roadmap has been set by people that know how to get there. And it's solid. So the next chapter is actually on decision. And here's what they said. Successful people make decisions quickly. They don't sit around and hem and haw and think about it for a long period of time. So that makes me think the people that I'm prospecting that are going, well, let me think about it or this and that, time's probably not right for them. Successful people make decisions fast. So the story in this book is pretty simple. When Andrew Carnegie asked Napoleon Hill, he said, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you handwritten letters to 25 or 500, of the richest people in the world. It'll be a 25-year project and you're not going to get paid a nickel. I want you to interview these people and write a practical manual for success. And as I heard the story, he literally had a stopwatch and gave Napoleon Hill about 1 minute to make up his mind. And 30 seconds within it, Napoleon Hill said, you know what, I'll do it and I'll do a great job at it. And sure enough, right, if he took more than that time, apparently Andrew Carnegie would have pulled the plug. But another thing about how this book was done and our format here, he said, look, you want to go out and talk to people that have done it, people that have gotten rich. So Mr. Bugg says, you know what, you don't want to be an MLM professor. You don't want to be a networking professor. You want to be a doer. Aristotle, this is ancient wisdom, said, that which we must learn to do, we must learn by doing. So you can read all about prospecting, but I'll tell you, until you go out and you're face-to-face with a person and you're talking to them, and you're getting conversation, and you're trying to reach common ground, you don't know what prospecting is all about. Until you're actually consistently sampling. I actually haven't found sampling to be as easy as I originally thought it was. And you've got to find the right opening. I've had people say no to me on samples, even after I thought I had rapport. And hey, it's going to happen for whatever reason. It wasn't right. And that's okay too, right? But you've got to go out there and do it. When it comes to giving a presentation, give a presentation. When it comes to follow-up, do the follow-up. When it comes to getting new people started right, you've got to get them started right. But as we make these decisions are actually going to make us. One book that I actually featured when I did another call was a book called The 7 Decisions by Andy Andrews, a really fantastic book. But the first decision is responsibility, extreme ownership. Take responsibility for absolutely everything in your world. Second decision is wisdom. You want to follow people that know, follow great books, follow the system, follow the leaders. Third decision is action. Einstein said, he says, nothing happens until something moves. If you don't move, nothing's going to happen. The fourth decision is actually the decision to persist or to decide, right? The committed decision. He used the analogy of Christopher Columbus. Apparently there was a mutiny when he was sailing over, and they said, hey, we have to turn back. And he said, we can't make it back. We took this many rations. We took 90 days worth. That's what I thought it would get to be the new place. We've been out 55 days. Guess what? We can't get back. We're going to get out of food. We got to go. We got to keep going forward. He was committed to making that happen. The happiness decision, they used Anne Frank as the example. Happiness is a choice. The forgiveness decision, they used Abraham Lincoln. And there was a great quote from that book. He asked Lincoln, he says, Lincoln, he says, do you think God's on your side? And Lincoln said, that's not my concern. I just want to be on God's side. So be on the side of that which is right, that which is true. And that seventh decision was actually persistence. And that's actually the ninth chapter here, persistence. So I will until. So I heard Jim Rohn one time in an audio. He says, yeah, every time I go out, I make a sale. Well, why is that? Because I don't come back until I make a sale. Every time I go out, I get a customer. Every time I go out, I get a prospect. Every time I go out, I sample somebody. If that is your commitment and you do not waver, if you make it happen every single time, then you will do what it takes to win. So you will until. Again, I don't know the hoops that Mr. Bernie Chua jumped through to get a patent on our process, but he did it until. And he's, guess what? Very, very, very well rewarded for that. Shane Moran, he basically said, you know what? Do what you said you would do, even if it hurts. And so the effort that he's put in, the miles that he traveled, the people that he talked to put us in over 50 countries. And Mr. Holton Buggs, 28 years now, I guess, in the industry, that kind of persistence with commitment to excellence and moving forward has paid off really, really well. 10, the power of the mastermind. This one is maybe what I think is the greatest gift of Think and Grow Rich. You will get so much more. We will get so much more out of synergy. So, the idea of synergy, if you think 1 and 1 is 2, no, it's synergy. 1 and 1 can be 11 or even more than that. When you get two people actually working together, combining their strengths, synergizing the power of mind, attracting all these wonderful forces of nature, you will be surprised at what will come your way. I know that everybody watching this has experienced synergy in many levels of their life, but we want to plug into the synergy of what we can do in this incredible business. When we plug into the leadership, Mr. Buggs gave a phenomenal example on his last call of Janet's successor in the UK. I've met Janet, a wonderful woman. She's been an emerald for a period of time, and she told Mr. Buggs, you know what, I'm ready. It's time to go diamond. And I believe he said her January volume was $60,000. Well, February is only a 28-day month. So you miss out on 3 days of volume. It might be harder to get that number. And I think going into the last day, he said that she was somewhere at around 140,000, but yet she finished the day with more than 200,000. Unfortunately, the structure, it wasn't such that she achieved diamond. Some of you may know that you can only get 40% from one leg. So if she had someone that exceeded 80,000, she was maxed out on them. But hats off to Janet for being a great example. But I asked our team out there, let's find out what she did and let's see what we can do. Well, she followed the system to a T, but when she had people make their list, you want to make a list of 100, you ask people for a list of 100, I can guarantee you most of the people that I've asked haven't even come close to that. So she said, who are your top 10? And on Mr. Bug's guidance, let's get them on the phone right now. And people would pick up the phone and say, listen, I'm with an absolutely amazing lady. She's shown me how to make my health and my life so much better. I know you would love her. Can we sit down and have a cup of coffee? I'll buy it, whatever she said. But she'd literally get them connected to him right away. And they would get connected and share the vision and share the dream and share the incredible testimonials and stories. And she has a great product testimonial herself. And next thing you know, they've got a business partner and they're scheduling the mixers, and now they're going into their list of 10. And if you do that every day for a month, you can do what Miss Janet did, and that's go from 60,000 to over 200,000 in a short period of time. So, one, great job for following the system. Mr. Bug's always phenomenal mentorship, leadership. I've shared the story, and I'll share it again many, many times. Kelly and I reached out to you when we were on our Blue Diamond run, and I couldn't see it. I didn't even think it was possible. And I had a conversation with you 8 days before the end of the month. We're at 380,000. And you told me, oh my gosh, Bob, you can hit 600,000. Here's how you do it. You go into your depth, you talk to your leaders, you find 10 or 12 leaders, each with 3 or 4 people that are running for a new rank, and help them hit it. And it was bulletproof. It worked like a champ. And we thank you so much for that. But that is the power of the mastermind. So the next chapter, it's called The Mystery of Sex Transmutation. And so when we think about that, human beings have certain biologic drives. And there's a book called The Means to an End, The Biologic Basis of Aging and Death. And it said quite simply that all animal species have one ultimate purpose, and that's to pass on their DNA. And we humans are in that category. So especially in our younger years, we have that at the forefront of our mind and our biology. And Napoleon Hill said, you know what? You've got to be able to have a level of self-discipline to overcome even biologic urges if you want to succeed ahead of the game. I took a meditation seminar a few months ago. And, we do hour-long meditations. And the instructor would say at the start, he'd say, okay, you need to be bigger than your bladder. You need to be bigger than your tummy. You need to be bigger than the cramp you might get in your leg. What you need to do is sit in silence and learn to calm your mind and focus and literally tap into the infinite intelligence of the universe, which, by the way, certainly I know is very, very possible to do. And hopefully we all get better at that every single day. But that chapter is just simply about having the self-discipline to master even the most basic of urges, and that's to get where you want to be. So I may go back to this weapon of mass distraction. Many of us have an urge to pick this thing up, to look at it 2,600 times a day. Shocking. If you're doing that, I guarantee you're not contributing to the world as much as you possibly can, and maybe this thing is owning you instead of you owning it. So, number 12, chapter 12 is going to be the subconscious mind. So I really like Bob Proctor. He would ask someone, hey, what color is your refrigerator? And ours just happens to be stainless steel. And he would say, well, what color is your car? Well, we've got a black Mercedes-Benz. Then he'd say, what color is your mind? And, people would say, well, all colors. How big is it? Well, sometimes it's big and sometimes it's small. But he said, you know what? No one's seen the mind. And then some guy in the 1930s, I think his name was Thurman Fleet, decided to draw the mind. And so you can use the analogy of the tip of the iceberg. Okay, you see the tip of the iceberg, it's about 5% of the iceberg. It's above the water. 95% is below. And that's really what he said our subconscious mind is. That's where all of the action is happening. And you will act basically on your subconscious mind. So Bob Proctor has a seminar called The Paradigm Shift. And he starts out by saying, I know why people do what they do. And you might ask yourself, well, my gosh, why do I repeat the same patterns? Why do I, just seem to maybe use the metaphor of shooting myself in the foot? Why do I sabotage my own success? Well, it may be that paradigm shift that you need to have. It may be that subconscious mind. We all need to change our programming. We need to understand that we are incredibly worthy, that we are wonderfully made, if we can use that term, that we deserve all the abundance that this world has. And we also need to know that there's more than enough for every single one of us. So when we tap into that subconscious mind, and that can be certainly through affirmations, through personal development, through reading, through meditation, through prayer, to our groups, our mastermind, that's how we tap into the power of the subconscious mind. Consistent effort is what it's going to take. I read a book called 3 Simple Steps, and it said, look, you don't have to go through all these steps. There's just 3. Number 1, it said, protect your mind. And literally it said, there's all these influences that are trying to hijack our subconscious mind. It was suggested that, someone who lives in a busy city is going to see something like 20,000 advertising images over the course of a day. I had heard of subliminal advertising, like at movies, where they supposedly had a frame of something from the concession stand coming in every 100 frames, where you couldn't even catch it, but your subconscious mind did. And when they do that, sales would go up. And actually, I don't know that story is exactly true, but it sounds reasonable that it would be. But if you don't protect your mind, if you don't direct what goes into it, if you don't access infinite intelligence, then quite simply, you're missing out. So chapter 13 is about the brain, and it says it's a broadcasting and receiving station for thought. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. Broadcasting, we kind of get that. Or maybe we think of my mouth as broadcasting. But wouldn't it be true that your brain would broadcast? Have you ever had a close friend or a mate or a spouse or a loved one, whoever, who you kind of knew what they were thinking as they were thinking it, or maybe they knew what you were thinking? And there's, for instance, sports teams. They have enough rhythm and enough gel and enough connection that they do know what each other's thinking. So we are broadcasting and we are receiving. And I've heard the analogy of like a radio station. You might say, gosh, I want to hear this song. Well, you've got to tune in to the right radio station, and then it has to be the right timing. And if you're tuned into the wrong station, then guess what? You're not going to get the right information. So the station we want to be tuned into is one of infinite wisdom, the one that it serves the public, that serves the world for a higher consciousness, one that does a whole lot of good. And you want to always be sending those good thoughts, and you always want to be receptive to those good thoughts. Be constantly tuned in. Another example that they've used is, if you are in a big room and they say, okay, I want you to look around and take note of everything that's blue, and you look and 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 look, and you see all this blue that maybe you didn't see before, and then they said, okay, now tell me everything you saw that was red. And you go, wait a minute, I didn't see any red. But you know what, you look around and now, yeah, there's a ton of red because you're looking for it. Well, the idea is simple. If you know what you want and you're tuned into it and you train yourself to look for it, you'll see it. You'll see it again and again and again. You might look out at your population and go, wow, there's people here seem well-to-do and no one wants any extra income. And then everyone else says, whoa, look at all these people. They've got all this stuff. They've got all these connections. What a beautiful group to connect into. So attitude's a big part of where you're going to be with that. So that reminded me of the story of someone that was a shoe salesman. 2 shoe salesmen go out to Africa, and one shows up and he sees no one wearing shoes, and he sends a report back and says, you know what? Not the market for us. People here don't wear shoes. And then the next guy sends a report back. He says, oh my God, ramp up production. Everybody here needs shoes. So it's all a matter of looking and seeing different things because you're tuned into different frequencies. So Napoleon Hill talks about the 6th sense or intuition being the door to the temple of wisdom. And I heard an interesting story and a metaphor. And this teacher had a student. He says, okay, I want to prove to you the power of subconscious. and I'm going to give you a riddle to solve. And he says, okay, it consists of 8 letters, and I want you to sleep on it and wake up, and I want you to tell me about your dreams. And so here are the 8 letters: HIJKLMNO, just like that. He says, okay, those are the 8 letters. Sleep on it, and as you're sleeping, pay attention or program your mind before you go to bed, and then record your dreams. When you wake up, record your dreams. And the guy, dreamt that he was on a beach, and it was beautiful, crystal clear water, and he was swimming and fishing and sailing, and suddenly he was on a boat, and there was a storm, and there was waves thrashing, and then he woke up, and he wrote all this down. And he went back to his teacher. He says, you know what, I don't have a clue. I went to bed, and I dreamed of this water, and I dreamed of fishing, and I dreamed of swimming, and it was crystal clear, and suddenly it was storming, and waves were battering the ship. And the guy says, your subconscious solved it. The letters that I gave you were the letters H to the letters O. H2O. I wanted you to think about water, and your subconscious solved it. Well, I can tell you many, many times I've had the experience of sleeping on a problem. I'm sure everybody here has done that. And you just let it roll around your subconscious, and you wake up with it. Even Napoleon Hill tells the story of when he was trying to come up with a title for this book. And they were having a really, really hard time coming up with it. And the publisher told him, he says, you got till tomorrow to come up with a title. And he came up with something like, the publisher said, if you don't come up with the title, I've got one. It's Use Your Noodle to Get the Boodle. And Napoleon Hill says, you got to be kidding me. This is a serious book. You'll ruin me. You can't do that. And so Napoleon Hill, he says, he gave his subconscious mind a real talking. And I hear an audio of him telling that. And he says, people probably thought I was arguing with my wife because I was so loud with my subconscious. But I woke up in the middle of the night, and there it was, the title, Think and Grow Rich. And the title grasped my attention 35 years ago. So many people it has. It's changed so many incredible lives. We have the joy of being partnered with this book. Use it, apply it, think, and grow rich. So our intuition, our sixth sense, is going to be the 14th chapter. And we can connect to our intuition, especially if we learn to consciously pay attention. Then he talks about the 6 ghosts of fear. And so it's said that people either move forward for inspiration or desperation. People either have a thrill of maybe something being positive on the other end, or maybe they have fear of loss. And it's been said that the fear of loss is certainly more significant for most people. So I've seen so many people in Organo present with so much power and so much wisdom, and we have some team members that'll just simply say, hey, listen, we're building a multi-million-dollar business. I guarantee you it's going to happen. You can either be part of it, or you can just let this opportunity slip you by. I think Mr. Halton Buggs said, you know what, I'm going to build a multi-million-dollar organization, billion-dollar organization. You can either join me and cash in, or you can watch me. I heard of Jose Ardone saying the exact same thing. So when we understand that people are driven more by fear of loss, we don't want to put irrational fears in their head, but we want to be very, very clear that we, guess what, have crossed $1 billion in sales faster than Starbucks. Mr. Holton Buggs' organization crossed $1 billion from his home faster than Starbucks. We have the biggest market, the number one commodity. We have a patented competitive advantage. We've got indisputable, top worldwide recognized leaders in the entire industry. We've got the king of compensation plan. We've got it. It's easy. It's simple. It's Organo. So with those magic words, I'm going to say good night. God bless. Put your beautiful mind to work as you think and grow rich, and hopefully nourish yourself with deep, beautiful sleep, and wake up ready to make the world better tomorrow. Good night.